I bought this top off of a clearance rack, and it was only like $2. But what I like about it is it's nice and stretchy, but it's a little more snug than I like it. I would love for this top to flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can alter this top by cutting off the sleeve and adding a gusset or a wedge in the side. All coming up next on Sewing with Nyler. To start with, we've got to determine how short we want to make the sleeve. Now, before you cut your sleeve, and this is going to depend a lot on how long your short sleeve will be, because you want to make sure you have enough fabric that's going to go from the under edge all the way down. The shirt is measuring 18 inches, so it's going to be about 18.5 inches. We need to see where 18.5 inches falls here, and 18.5 inches falls right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 18.5 inches. This is going to give me just a little cap sleeve because I really could go sleeveless, but I wanted some type of a sleeve. So now that's going to give me a 6-inch sleeve on the top, and that's pretty much what I wanted, was a 6-inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chalk pencil and I'm going to mark that 6 inches there, or the 18 inches. So we're just going to chalk this over, and when I chalk it, I'm going to bring the sleeve down a little bit. Now I'm going to pin this so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is actually going to be my cut line. I'm going to cut just like that. And that's going to give me that little short little cap sleeve. So since that's where we're going to cut, I'm going to go ahead and just remove the pins now. And I'm going to cut that. And the good thing about this is that this top only costs $1.99 on a clearance rack. And so even if you mess it up, you only mess up $1.99. So I'm going to lay this sleeve on top of it so that we can mirror the edges. And I'm going to go ahead and just cut it exactly the same. Okay. So now we have turned our top into a short sleeve top with a little small cap sleeve, which I think is really cool. So now what you want to do with these sleeves is you want to open up the seam. So I'm just going to cut that off. Okay, just like that, and open that sleeve out. We've got that taken care of. So now we have our two sleeve pieces opened up. So what you want to do next is you want to open up your side seam. So I'm going to turn the top on the wrong side. I'm just going to cut it on the line and open it up, just like so. Now when I get to the sleeve portion, I'm not cutting all the way to the sleeve. So now, if you notice, you see how you see that V? That's the top itself, the way I've got it spread out. It pretty much tells you exactly how wide the gusset needs to be. And in this case, it looks like the gusset can be up to 8 inches. Or you can bring it in if you don't want that much. So you determine how much space you want. Just move it in. And I think if I get that much space, I'll be okay. Remember, you got seam allowances. So the good thing about it, if you do too much, you can always go back and take it out. Here is our sleeve. I'm going to turn the sleeve on the wrong side, and I'm going to line it up with the bottom. Now you see what I did there? By not cutting off that sleeve at the bottom, see, we don't even have to hem it because we can run these together, and that'll act as your hem, and it'll look like it all came that way. I'm going to go ahead and use the whole width of my sleeve. And so what you want to do is just pin that in place at the bottom, because we know that that's going to give us the fullness that we want, because I want the top nice and flowy. Like I said, we can always go back and take it in if it's too big. So now that we've got that done, I'm going to lay this down on top, and I'm going to place it up under the hole, just like so. Okay, and that's going to pretty much give me an area so that I can draw out my gusset. We know that the tip of the sleeve needs to be right here. So we're not going to cut any of that off. So we know that that seam allowance is going to be right there. So let's tuck that back under there. And you're going to take your chalk pencil and you're going to draw out Now this is rolled back, and I kind of like the fact that it's rolled back because that way I can cut it back there. So now I can take it out, take the pins out, and working with that one piece. Now I can see my chalk line, and I know you can't see it, but I'm going to cut it so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is what we have now. So this becomes our gusset, or our little insert piece. So now that you got this, you can now take your other sleeve and lay them down facing with the wrong sides together or right sides together, but make sure you have the same piece together. Now this time you do want to roll it out because you don't want any curls on your fabric, because it's going to have a tendency to try to curl on you. So now we simply just use the scissors and just cut this out. So now we have our two gusset pieces, and now we're ready to attach. So I have it all pinned in place. I want you to see what it looks like under the arm. As you can see, where the center piece is, it's meeting right here at that center seam. So when you go to sew it, you want to sew it from this side so that you can actually see the seam here. So you want to go into that seam and then sew down. So we're going to go ahead and get the seam sewn. I'm going to put my needle down, and I'm going to put it in place right at the seam where the sleeve comes in. So I'm going to put it right at that seam, and then that's where we're going to start sewing. And because this is a stretch knit, if you're sewing knit, of course you want to use the stretch stitch. If you're sewing cotton, then you can use whatever stitch, but use the needle and the stitch according to your fabric. You can check out my video on how to choose needles, and we're just going to sew. Now one side has been sewn, and I just wanted to turn it so you can kind of see. And see, we got the stitch in there, and it's holding up stretchy. So now what you want to do on the other side is you're going to flip it over, and you'll start sewing from the bottom up. But this time, remember, when you get to that center stitch here, you want to make sure you join your stitch and make sure that the two stitches fit together on the back side. And I'll show you that once we get it sewn. As you can see, both of my stitches joined right there. So when you turn it on the wrong side, you see you got a nice corner spot where the seams just come right together in that little point. Okay, now that both gussets have been inserted, now will be a good time for you to try it on and see if you need to take in any more, if it's too much. And so what you can do, if you want to take it in, you can actually take one side of the gusset apart and move it in. If you should choose to do that, you just remove your stitching and then just shift it back and then restitch it. And then what you want to do is go back in, and you want to finish off these edges. If you don't have a serger, you can zigzag the edges, but I'm going to use my serger and just shave them off and make it nice and neat. So I went ahead and I serged my seams. As you can see, they're all serged nice and neat. And then I went back and pressed it and made sure that when I pressed it, the seams went away from the gusset on both sides, all the way up to the underarm section. So it ended up looking rather nice. And when you turn it on the right side, this is what you get. And that's our gusset. It looks very neat. I also went ahead and serged the sleeves because I'm just going to turn up a really small seam allowance to give me as much sleeve as possible. And I'm just going to go ahead and top stitch that down now. And because my sleeve is going to be short and the seam is going to be visible, I went ahead and cut some interfacing in a very thin strip, just like that. And then I ironed it into the hem, so that way when I turn it over and stitch it, it'll be nice and firm and it'll hold up a little better. So now when I press it, you see I have a much prettier stitch, and you see the seam doesn't roll on you. Here's a sample of what it looks like if you stitched it without it. And you can see without the interfacing how you get a curl, and we don't want that curl. It gives us a nice straight stitch. So wow, what a difference. Now the top flows and it gives you more room without it being stretched. And besides, when you wash the top, it's going to shrink. But now that we have the gussets added, it makes a big difference. It gives us a nice flow. The gusset looks pretty good. So I hope this tip has been helpful, and I hope you try it. Happy sewing!